We are going to fight again, whether it's in the octagon or on the sidewalk. You don't say the stuff he said.
The notorious one obliterated Poirier with ruthless efficiency in just 106 seconds. A surgical left-hand sequence sent the Louisiana native crashing to the canvas, followed by ground strikes that sealed the opening round finish at exactly 1:46 of the first frame. Official Herb Dean halted the contest as McGregor's celebrity status catapulted into the mainstream stratosphere. For the Diamond, this represented the most crushing and publicly embarrassing defeat of his entire professional journey. He subsequently confessed that McGregor's unrelenting pre-fight psychological assault, ridiculing his durability, confidently predicting a swift conclusion, and completely dismissing everything Poirier had sacrificed to achieve, had penetrated his mental defenses entirely, forcing him to compete with reckless emotion instead of tactical discipline. Those 106 seconds of complete annihilation fundamentally transformed Dustin Poirier's entire philosophical approach to mixed martial arts and reshaped his core identity as a combatant. Throughout the following 6 years, while McGregor pursued and captured featherweight gold by annihilating Jose Aldo in an unprecedented 13-second masterpiece at UFC 194, then ascended to lightweight to demolish Eddie Alvarez and claim historic simultaneous dual-division championship status, then ventured into professional boxing to challenge Floyd Mayweather in one of combat sports' most financially successful spectacles, then returned to face submission defeat against Khabib Nurmagomedov, then accumulated mounting legal complications, personal scandals, and extended competitive absences. During this entire period, Poirier methodically and systematically reconstructed himself from fundamental principles into one of the most lethal and comprehensively skilled lightweight assassins on the entire UFC roster. He conquered former champions Eddie Alvarez and Anthony Pettis. He demolished Justin Gaethje in an instant classic that earned Fight of the Year recognition. He outdueled Max Holloway to claim interim lightweight gold in April 2019. His boxing evolved into genuinely elite-level artistry. His grappling matured into a legitimate multi-positional threat. And his calf kicks, those punishing, surgically precise low attacks targeting the peroneal nerve cluster on an adversary's lead limb, transformed into the signature tactical weapon that would ultimately redefine the McGregor rivalry from foundation to conclusion. By late 2020, both warriors agreed to settle their unfinished business at lightweight. The promotional buildup initially maintained respectful undertones. McGregor even committed to a $500,000 contribution to Poirier's Good Fight Foundation, a charitable organization focused on supporting disadvantaged youth initiatives throughout Lafayette, Louisiana. That philanthropic commitment would rapidly evolve into one of the most contentious and bitter controversy points in their entire feud. But before the financial disputes, before the character assassinations, before everything that followed descended into darkness, they needed to compete. UFC 257 unfolded on January 23, 2021, at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, on Fight Island. McGregor emerged with characteristic sharpness and aggression throughout the opening frame, connecting with powerful left hooks and a devastating shovel uppercut that violently snapped Poirier's head backward. However, Poirier weathered the initial storm with extraordinary mental fortitude and systematically began dismantling McGregor's front right leg with crushing, perfectly targeted calf kicks that inflicted cumulative structural damage with each successive impact. The fight site's technical analysis characterized the approach as the systematic destruction of a southpaw stance. Poirier exploited the mirror image southpaw versus southpaw positional dynamics to relentlessly attack McGregor's lead leg, progressively neutralizing the Irishman's explosive entry and exit combinations, and systematically eliminating the footwork and lateral mobility that established Conor McGregor as one of mixed martial arts' most devastating striking specialists. By the second stanza, the accumulated structural damage had reached catastrophic and undeniable levels. McGregor's compromised leg repeatedly failed to support his body weight. His signature pivoting and angling capabilities completely vanished. Poirier advanced with supreme tactical confidence, cornered McGregor against the cage perimeter, and delivered a devastating counter right hook that sent McGregor tumbling hard to the mat. Poirier immediately swarmed with vicious fight-finishing ground assault, hammering brutal punches to the skull until referee Herb Dean intervened to halt the action at exactly 2:32 of round 2. The official CompuStrike metrics revealed the complete story. Poirier connected on 48 of 91 significant strikes at 52% precision compared to McGregor's 29 of 66 at merely 43%. This marked the inaugural knockout or technical knockout defeat of Conor McGregor's entire UFC tenure. The trilogy stood officially deadlocked at one victory apiece.
I didn't have a goal, and when I found fighting, I wanted to be the best at that, so everything else didn't matter to me. You know, whatever that outlet is, even like I was talking with a guy, I just did a conference where I spoke in Mexico a couple of days ago. He has a nonprofit where he builds skate parks in cities, and he's built some in New Orleans. And I think just something so simple as a a skateboard and a place to go ride and meet people, and the camaraderie and stuff you learn from that to get out of bad places. Fighting was that for me. That was my safe place when I was young.
Jolie Poirier transported Dustin to his inaugural professional bout in Arkansas when he couldn't afford his own vehicle. She remained beside him in America's cheapest, most deteriorated motels, with water-damaged carpeting and barely functional electrical systems, while he prepared for contests that offered minimal financial compensation. She served as his stability when direction seemed impossible, his faith when self-confidence had evaporated completely.
When I was in juvenile detention, and me and her might have not even been dating at the time, she was writing me letters every week. One of the only, besides my mother, only letters I would get was her. And when I got out of juvenile detention, she was there. She drove all the way out, to watch me leave and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm gonna marry this girl.
McGregor ruthlessly destroyed that woman's reputation publicly, exploiting her for social media engagement, for mental warfare advantages, for the calculated controversy that drives pay-per-view revenue streams. He violated boundaries that Dustin Poirier has never, not once throughout the subsequent years, pardoned or erased from memory. On July 10, 2021, at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, before a capacity crowd, Poirier entered the octagon to confront a man he now genuinely, profoundly, and completely loathed. UFC 264 represented the decisive rubber match, the third and ultimately final encounter of their trilogy. The contest began competitively, both warriors loaded with malicious intent. McGregor utilized spinning body attacks and straight left combinations. Poirier responded with leg kicks and relentless forward advancement. They clinched and transitioned to ground combat. McGregor attempted a guillotine submission. Poirier escaped and countered with elbows and brutal ground strikes from dominant position. Poirier accumulated 3 minutes and 18 seconds of control time on the canvas. McGregor accumulated precisely 0. Then in the final moments of the round, as both men exchanged heavy strikes on their feet before separating, McGregor stepped backward to reset his positioning, and his left tibia and fibula fractured horrifically beneath him in a compound break visible to every broadcasting camera in the venue. He collapsed to the mat in excruciating pain. Referee Herb Dean terminated the fight at the 5-minute conclusion of round 1 via medical stoppage. Poirier emerged victorious. The fracture was likely initiated by an earlier checked kick that compromised bone integrity before the backward step completed the devastating structural failure. McGregor was transported from the arena via stretcher, underwent emergency surgical intervention, and has not participated in professional mixed martial arts competition since that evening, an absence that by February 2026 had extended beyond 4.5 years. A legacy inscribed in shattered bone, the trilogy reached its conclusion. Poirier held a definitive 2-1 series advantage. McGregor captured the inaugural meeting at featherweight in 2014, but Poirier dominated both lightweight rematches, finishing McGregor each time. Total combat time across all 3 encounters approximately 14 minutes and 18 seconds, spanning 858 combined seconds of action, brief, explosive, violent affairs that produced 2 knockouts and a catastrophic fracture. Dana White initially suggested the possibility of a 4th encounter once McGregor recovered from surgery, but it never materialized. Rather than retire comfortably following his trilogy triumph, Poirier continued competing against the planet's most dangerous opponents. He challenged Charles Oliveira for undisputed lightweight championship gold at UFC 2069 in December 2021, losing via rear-naked choke submission in the 3rd round after competitive early striking exchanges. He battled Justin Gaethje for the symbolic BMF championship at UFC 2091 in July 2023, losing by unanimous decision in a brutal, exhausting war that exceeded every expectation established by their previous classic. He rebounded with a dominant knockout performance, utilizing veteran intelligence to defeat rising French contender Benoit Saint-Denis in March 2024. He earned another undisputed lightweight title opportunity at UFC 3002 in June 2024, challenging dominant champion Islam Makhachev, and losing via 5th-round submission at 242. His 3rd unsuccessful attempt at the singular championship that perpetually slipped away at the final, most heartbreaking moment. Then on July 19, 2025, at UFC 318 at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, Louisiana, in his home territory, surrounded by the community and culture that transformed him from troubled teenager into world-class combatant, Dustin Poirier fought Max Holloway for the 3rd and final time in a 5-round farewell battle for BMF gold. The contest delivered a classic back-and-forth war. Holloway won by unanimous decision with scorecards reading 48-47, 49-46, 49-46. When the final bell sounded, Poirier placed his gloves at Octagon's center, embraced the crowd, and departed professional competition with a career record of 30 victories, 10 defeats, and 1 no contest. He was 36 years old, 15 knockouts and technical knockouts inside the UFC octagon, the 5th highest total of significant strikes landed in organizational history at 1,961, tied for the most fight night bonuses in UFC history with 10, 15 total post-fight performance bonuses throughout his career, 3 separate opportunities at undisputed lightweight championship gold that all concluded in defeat, the one trophy, the one achievement, the one piece of hardware that perpetually, invariably eluded him regardless of proximity. Yet not a single voice throughout the mixed martial arts community, not one commentator, not one analyst, not one fellow fighter questions whether Dustin Poirier deserves UFC Hall of Fame induction. The man's credentials transcend debate.
I didn't have a car. She drove me to my first fight in Arkansas. I didn't even have a car. She stayed with me like in a motel, the worst, like a Motel 8, Motel 6. They kept the lights on for us. It was barely, the carpet was soggy and nasty, and those kind of hotels.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, she drove me to weigh-ins, everything, I don't know. I just could never do that again with another person because she's seen the struggles from the beginning. So I could never rebuild this, and I never want to have to.
So when
The question haunting everything following retirement remains straightforward: could stepping away from competition finally extinguish the animosity? Consider the extraordinary emotional complexities operating simultaneously beneath the surface. Poirier, at 37 years old, officially retired, working as ESPN and Paramount analyst, residing back home in Lafayette, Louisiana, managing businesses, braiding his 8-year-old daughter's hair after school. This man still carries the psychological weight of what Conor McGregor said about his wife during their rivalry's darkest chapter. He still carries the scar tissue from that 2014 first-round demolition, the 106 seconds of complete destruction that forced him to reconstruct his entire fighter identity from scratch. He still carries the sting of the charitable controversy, the abandoned $500,000 donation, the public questioning of his Good Fight Foundation's legitimacy by the sport's most famous and followed athlete. He still carries the frustrating, maddening, perpetually gnawing awareness that despite maintaining a decisive 2-1 trilogy advantage over McGregor, despite finishing him twice at lightweight, despite outstriking him significantly, outcontrolling him on the ground, and outperforming him in virtually every meaningful statistical category across their final 2 meetings, a substantial and persistently vocal segment of the global MMA fanbase still elevates Conor McGregor above him in historical greatness discussions. The official record tells one clean, simple narrative. McGregor won at 145 pounds in 2014. Poirier won twice at 155 pounds in 2021. But the emotional ledger, the running calculation of insults endured, promises shattered, families attacked and dragged into public spectacle, legacies defended and questioned, proves far more complicated, far more painful, and far less easily resolved than any win-loss column could ever capture. McGregor became the inaugural fighter in UFC history to hold simultaneous divisional championships. He owns the fastest knockout in UFC title fight history at a staggering 13 seconds. He transformed the sport's global popularity, commercial reach, and cultural impact more than any individual fighter in organizational history. He possesses, as he proclaimed on social media in one of his trademark grandiose declarations, every fiscal record in company history. Yet, and this is the crucial element, the part that explains everything about February 7, 2026, in the singular rivalry that defined both careers with the greatest emotional intensity and highest personal stakes, Dustin Poirier emerged victorious on the official scorecards, and Dustin Poirier absolutely, categorically, and ferociously refuses to allow any living soul on the internet to forget that fact. Whether a fourth fight between these men materializes at the White House or any other venue on any date remains pure speculation as of February 2026. McGregor has not confirmed a return opponent. Poirier has not confirmed any reversal of his retirement, but the hatred, the genuine, raw, unvarnished, decade-plus hatred that has hardened and crystallized between these human beings through 3 fights, through broken bones and broken promises, through attacks on wives and disputes over charity money, through deleted tweets and refused olive branches, that hatred endures permanently. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Diamond defeated his rival twice, retired on his terms in his home state before the people who raised him, and still awakened on a random Friday morning in February 2026 to remind every person on the internet exactly what transpired between them inside that cage. This is not a grudge born of boredom. This is not a retired man with excessive free time. This is a legacy carved in bone, and it will persist as long as both men draw breath.
So I might have been making $14,000 to fight, and I get a $65,000 check. I'm like, this is the life. This is how it's supposed to be. Got home, got out of debt, paid off my wife's car, She moved with me to Florida, dropped out of school. Like, that wasn't by chance. I don't believe in coincidence like that. This was all supposed to happen. The people I met in my life through fighting, Mike Brown. I mean, the list goes on and on of incredible minds I've met through fighting, but I don't believe it was coincidence. Like, this was the path I was supposed to. It was written before I started, following the script. I'm thankful like looking back on it now, because I still feel young, but sometimes I'll see old fights on TV and I'm like, man, I can't believe I came this far and done the things I've done. I'm just thankful. I try to stay in a place of gratitude.
That was Dustin Poirier, speaking about Conor McGregor moments after snapping the Irishman's leg at UFC 2064 in July 2021. 4.5 years later, officially retired and supposedly at peace with the world, the Diamond logged onto X and proved that promise was not just taught. The Diamond chooses violence. On February 7th, 2026, exactly 7 months and 19 days after officially retiring from professional mixed martial arts by leaving his gloves inside the octagon in front of a roaring crowd at New Orleans, Louisiana, Dustin the Diamond Poirier, a man who had seemingly closed the book on one of the most decorated and fan-beloved careers in UFC history, picked up his phone, opened the X app, scrolled through his timeline, and did something that sent absolute shockwaves through the entire combat sports world. He did not announce a surprise comeback fight. He did not reveal a lucrative new business deal or post a cryptic training highlights suggesting his retirement might be short-lived. Instead, the 37-year-old from Lafayette, Louisiana, quote, tweeted a video clip that had been posted the previous day by @Mistarma on February 6th, a clip showing Conor McGregor attempting a karate stance against Poirier during one of their past encounters, and attached to it 7 words that immediately detonated across the entire ecosystem of MMA social media, like a bomb with no warning. Beat is nuts. Felt so nice, I did it twice. Within 24 hours, that single post had accumulated over 15,000 likes, more than 900 reposts, and hundreds upon hundreds of replies and quote tweets from fans, media accounts, and fellow fighters who could not believe what they were seeing unfold in real time. A retired champion, 7 months removed from his farewell fight, still carrying enough raw, unfiltered venom toward his most famous rival to publicly eviscerate the biggest name in UFC history without a single shred of hesitation or regret, and he was far from finished. Poirier did not fire off that initial shot and log off to enjoy his Friday afternoon in peace. Late on the timeline, scrolled through the replies and engaged in hand-to-hand digital combat with anyone and everyone who dared step into his mentions to defend Conor McGregor's honor. When a fan with the handle at @wingwe_ replied claiming that the third fight doesn't count, implying that the UFC 264 leg break stoppage was somehow not a legitimate victory for Poirier, Diamond fired back without an ounce of mercy. Check his record and my record, you. When another user accused Poirier of turning into a wrestler across the trilogy to avoid getting knocked out by McGregor's left hand, Poirier asked pointedly who actually initiated the grappling exchanges in those fights. And when yet another fan attempted to claim that the third fight was neck and neck before the freak leg injury ended, Poirier shut the revisionist history down with surgical precision. Definitely not neck and neck. I was punishing him. The MMA media machine amplified every single word with breathless urgency. Home of Fight posted a full Instagram compilation of the entire tweet thread, captioning the episode as Poirier feeling bored and deciding on a whim to start posting about his battles with McGregor for the entertainment of the entire internet. A CDMMA screenshot of the exchange in its entirety and added the full breadth of Poirier's remarks for context, packaging it as a complete demolition job. The fight course summarized the situation with characteristic bluntness, describing what Poirier was doing as methodically cooking McGregor's loyal defenders throughout the entire day. Fan accounts across Instagram and Threads reposted the screenshots with captions declaring that the hatred is real, as if anyone who had followed this rivalry for the past 12 years needed to be reminded of that particular fact. Fan reels described Poirier as outright eviscerating McGregor, and perhaps most significantly, MMA, uncensored, connected the social media barrage directly to the most tantalizing rumors circulating in the sport. Dustin Poirier goes off on Conor McGregor. Will we see a fourth fight? A question tied to the widely discussed possibility of a UFC event at the White House on June 14, 2006, where McGregor's long-awaited return to competition could theoretically headline. Because here is the context that makes this more than a retired fighter. Killing time on social media. McGregor has been teasing a return to the octagon relentlessly throughout early 2026. He has posted about being back in training camp. He has declared publicly that he possesses huge plans, a colossal bank, and modern medical science superpowers at his disposal. He has invoked God, recited the Lord's Prayer on his timeline, and promised the entire world that they have seen nothing yet. Meanwhile, reports from both Sportskeeda and Essentially Sports indicate that Poirier has specifically hinted at coming out of retirement to be the man who welcomes McGregor back to the cage, potentially at that rumored White House card that has captured the imagination of the entire MMA fanbase. McGregor, for his part, has remained conspicuously silent on Poirier throughout this cycle. As of February 8, 2026, no direct response from McGregor to any of the taunt posts has materialized. He has been posting on X about family, about cigars, about his Catholic faith, and about his ambiguous return timeline. But he has not engaged with Poirier's provocations in any way whatsoever. The shots, as of right now, are entirely one-sided, but make no mistake, this was not some random outburst from a bored retiree scrolling Twitter with nothing better to do. Poirier has repeatedly and emphatically denied any possibility of reconciliation with McGregor in multiple interviews over the years, when McGregor commented "Congrats bro" on a social media post, celebrating the birth of Poirier's newborn child in early 2026, a seemingly benign, even gracious gesture of goodwill from a former rival. Poirier dismissed it entirely, refusing to acknowledge the olive branch. In past sit-down interviews with Ariel Helwani, when asked directly and point-blank whether the feud with McGregor was finally over, Poirier's answer was exactly 2 words long, the second word being Conor, and the first being a vulgarity that cannot be repeated here. There has been no handshake. There has been no bearing of the hatchet. There has been absolutely nothing that even remotely resembles closure between these two men. To understand why, you have to travel back more than a decade, to the night of brash, trash-talking Irishman destroyed a kid from Cajun country in 106 seconds, and unknowingly set in motion one of the most deeply personal, most bitterly contested, and most commercially successful rivalries in the entire history of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. How the rivalry was built, how or so, and how it turned ugly. Their collision course began at UFC 178, held on September 27, 2014 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Conor McGregor was the ascending comet of the 145-pound featherweight division, a brash, impossibly confident, electrifying Irish southpaw who had weaponized trash talk and psychological warfare into a performing art that the sport of mixed martial arts had simply never witnessed before at that caliber. Poirier, meanwhile, was a talented but still developing 25-year-old from Lafayette, Louisiana, a kid from deep in Cajun country who had dropped out of high school, spent time locked up in juvenile detention, and ultimately found salvation, identity, and purpose through combat sports when absolutely nothing else in his young troubled life could provide those things for him.